Check one, two, three. Hey everybody, it's Michael Helms, also known as Michael the Sound Guy, and this is the Location Sound Podcast. You know, each episode we talk with location sound mixers, boom ops, and other industry pros about the various aspects of recording sound on location, whether it's for feature and independent films, TV commercials, interviews, any time where dialogue from actors is recorded. I started my career in the recording studios in New York City with some of the big artists back in the day, and later on projects for networks like HBO, Sci-Fi Channel, and the Cartoon Network. As time went by, I got out of the studio and began working in production sound. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or just starting out, thanks for joining us. All right, welcome back to the Location Sound Podcast. Today we're talking with a production sound mixer based out of Orlando, Florida. Please welcome Ryan Monette.
Hello.
Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you for having me, sir. It's an honor and privilege to be here.
Glad you could make it. Let's kick it off. Kind of tell us what's in your audio kit.
All right, what's in my audio kit? Well, let's see. For location production audio, I try to keep it a little simple. I'm not doing too huge of productions most of the time. So I've got more of your tune and boom kind of setup. It's based around a Sound Devices MixPre 10.2, which is great. I love it. I think it's super versatile. It's got plenty of inputs. I'm always recording at 32-bit float just in case. So a lot of the stuff I do, which I know we'll dive into later, is being based in Orlando. I'm close to the most magical place on earth, as they call it, Disney World. And so we do a lot of stuff in the parks, which presents its own challenges, which again, we can dive into later. You know, recording 32-bit float is great if you're in a very unpredictable environment. We're recording interviews, guests, and stuff like that, attractions, all this stuff. So that's great. When it comes to wireless, it was an Audio Limited A10 dual channel receiver, but when Sound Devices acquired Audio Limited and they came out with the A20 setup, they had an offer where you could send in your A10 receiver and they would basically retrofit it to an A20. So now I have a A20 receiver, but then I still have two A10 transmitters. So
what lavs do you use on those?
Yeah, I love DPA. And so I'm using the 6060s. They've been great. Super small. I think DPA sounds the most natural. I really like, honestly, their 4060s. And if I get some more, I'll probably get those in my toolkit as well, just because I think they sound just a smidge bit more natural. I do a lot of stuff in post-production. And so everyone knows that lav sound. And I think DPA does a really great job at having lavs be a little bit more natural sounding. And so, yeah, love the 6060s. So I have two of those with my 2 channels of wireless.
Okay. And shotgun mics, what do you like?
So I've only honestly got one in my kit right now, and it is the Sanken CS3E. I love it. Again, it sounds natural, full, but it's really great with off-axis rejection, very directional, which again, a lot of the stuff I do is in theme parks. It's in situations where I don't have time to mic up people or talent, because a lot of the stuff I do is with guests. And so going up to guests and saying, hey, random stranger, I know you came here to enjoy Mickey Mouse. Can I put this microphone on your body? It's not really an option. So having something very directional in a very loud environment that you can only control very, very little of has been great. It's been helpful. And so love that mic. Definitely have a long wish list on B&H. For interior stuff, I definitely want to at some point get the MKH50. That's on the list. And then when it comes to my boom pole, I've got an ambient recording. Pretty sure it's carbon fiber. What's cool about ambient recording boom pole is I used to work for a large church based out in Charlotte, North Carolina. And we tried to keep audio kits compact to where they could fit in Pelican cases. And K-Tech has their Traveler boom, which when it collapses, it's like, 1.5 foot, and you can fit it at least diagonally in your standard Pelican case. And there'd be so many times with that where the soldering joints, for the XLR out or in, whichever end on the bottom of the boom pole, would just come undone because of the coil XLR inside. Once you collapse it, just bunches up, and then the soldering joints over time just get weak. And that kind of bit me in the butt on a project in Africa where I think we were in Tanzania, and we had just arrived there, and I had to have someone scramble and go find a soldering gun to fix this boom pole. So kind of ever since then, I've been weary on boom poles with kind of built-in cabling. And so what I like about the ambient recording boom pole I have, which I don't believe they have this specific model anymore. I think it extends up to 13 feet. But it is internally cabled, but it has a port on the outside, on the bottom of the boom, where the cable kind of just comes out. It's just a big hole and opening, and then the XLR where you can connect to your bag. It just kind of like pops out. And so there isn't any bunching or binding when you collapse the boom pole, and it's been great. It's lasted me many, many years. Feels good. Yeah, so I love ambient recordings.
Awesome. And what type of timecode sync boxes do you like?
I've got Tentacles. And those have been great. Yeah, I really have no problems with those. I love them. I keep one attached to my bag at all times. And then I have a couple more that I can give to a camera. And that's been great. Just at the start of the day, just power them all on and sync them with my phone, and we're good to go.
Nice. And actually, I can tell how we met, but we met recently working on the Disney holiday specials that were being filmed in the parks.
We did.
I was with an E&G crew, and we were doing commercial bumpers for the various shows that are going to air this holiday season. And we were over in Animal Kingdom by Pandora, and we were going to share a set with you guys, but I hadn't even been over there yet. So when I got over there, I remember seeing an audio bag hanging on a C-stand with two little Betso bow ties. And I'm like, where's the sound person? I need to go introduce myself.
No, I love that. It's always, and I know we were talking about this too, it's funny on set or on shoots where there is another sound guy, because most often you're the only one. And so it's very infrequent that I get to meet another location sound person. So it was great to run into you. And I'd say we hit it off pretty quickly and just geeking out on all our gear and comparing and just having fun. So no, that was awesome.
Yeah, after talking with you about your Betso bow ties, I've been talking to other mixers, and they all had them. And I said, so I just got some finally, because I was talking to another local sound mixer here in Orlando, Michael Reed, and he did some tests, and he took them outside and he mic'd up his wife and child, and they walked, and he tried them with the whips, he tried them with the bow ties, and I think he had another antenna he tried, and he said it was great. So he really definitely saw the distance, and so I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to finally get some.
Yeah, just for something passive, just a little bit of help you can get is always helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. Greg Murphy is another past guest we had on the podcast, and he got some recently. And actually, he was on the Disney project with us, and he was using the bow ties, and that was the first time he'd used them. But he said he was getting another 10 or 15 feet, he felt like, of distance, that he could be away from. So, well, first of all, it's an RF nightmare.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you're in a theme park, you're in a very crowded environment with just normal theme park operations, because they've got shows throughout the entire day, usually every 15 minutes, at least every hour. There's a parade, there's stage shows, and so there's all this RF floating around, and you're very limited.
Yeah. Then you have the broadcast production team that was also filming, and they had their mics going. I scanned for some quiet spots, and I was able to find a couple here and there, but then they also had a frequency coordinator there. And so we connected with Preston, and he would say, okay, these were good right here. Oh, this is right on us, so you need to find something different. It just was, it was quite the adventure. So there were a couple times where it was clear, and then all of a sudden, right in the middle, so I'm like stepping as close as I can to talent. Of course, they didn't want us to have to record too many takes if we didn't have to. So
of course, yeah.
What were you recording actually at the event?
Yeah, so what we were doing, I want to say this is probably, I think this is my fourth year doing holiday special stuff. And so what we typically do, I work with an agency called Yellow Shoes, which is Mickey Mouse has yellow shoes. And so it's Disney's internal ad agency. And they'll produce a lot of stuff for advertising, mainly on social media. So, if you're scrolling on your phone, Instagram, YouTube, anything social media, if you see like an advertisement for Disney, the Disney parks usually comes through them. We'll be there throughout the specials, and we won't necessarily film the specials themselves, but we'll kind of be standing aside and we'll have 15 or so minutes with the talent, the celebrities that are performing for the show, so they can do fun little things, quick interviews, quick little, hey, join us, on Christmas Day, ABC, yada, yada, stuff like that. We do a couple little spots with them, and usually it's very hurry and wait kind of thing. So, we're setting up, we got plenty of time, tweaking lighting, just sitting, waiting. And then talent gets there and it's a frenzy and you only got like 10 minutes and you better get everything you need, hurry. And then you're done. But it's fun. It's fun. So it's cool. Over the years, we've gotten to do a good handful of people, and it's been great. It's been really fun from this side of things. And yeah.
So what other projects in the parks are you doing?
Yeah, in the parks, we do a lot of testimonies from guests, which they call guestimonials. And so same thing. These are things that end up on Instagram, YouTube, ads, or even just like on their own page where it's real life. We'll set up, they'll have PAs, crew members just kind of out in the parks and just see people and say like, hey, do you have, a few minutes? You want to just share with us your story, your experience and stuff like that. And so we're getting real people, authentic reactions, just asking them how their experience is, and, put together all these pieces with people just talking about it, and great. And so we do that a lot. And that's, again, where those challenges lie. You're in a theme park, which is active, and there's only certain flexibility. So not only are theme parks just loud with thousands upon thousands of guests, but there's attractions around you. There's background music. That's that's my number one enemy most of the times. But depending on the park, the location, the season, you can work with the park and park relations. And if you're in a certain area, they can sometimes either turn the background music down a little bit, or if you're lucky, they can mute it for however long you're there, a couple hours or whatever. So that's always an adventure. There's been times where I've brought Fernie blankets and wrapped speakers. Sometimes that works great, actually. And then when you're just working with normal park guests, and oftentimes it's families too. There's no time. Would be awkward to be like, just miking big families, and there's children involved as well. Putting laws on people isn't really an option. So you're kind of relying on just the boom in a very loud theme park. Also, especially if there's a wide shot with a big family, then it's the dance, working with the DP on like, hey, I only have the shotgun, so we got to be able to hear them. Let's figure out the best framing. So typically for these types of in-park guestimonials, the DP is one of my close friends, and so we have a really good rapport. We go back years and years to living in Charlotte together. So we have a good relationship where he kind of already knows that ahead of time too. Like, hey, we got a big family. Ryan's got just the mic, so we got to make sure that he's got enough, can get close enough to hear these people. If, like a mom's talking, then all of a sudden the little kid talks, but little kid is knee level to mom, like he knows that I got to dip on down with the boom. And so he gives the camera a little bit of movement too anyway. So it's not just a static shot. And so he'll, tilt down, zoom in, kind of thing like that. So we have a good little dance. So do a lot of that. We've done a lot of other things like holiday specials, some fun, random pieces in the parks featuring certain cast members, or a lot of things for like Run Disney, some of the festivals, promoting new rides, new attractions. Yeah, stuff like that. There's a handful of really cool projects that we've gotten to do and that I've gotten to be a part of. And, I've got some favorites I can share with you later and whatnot.
All right. Yeah, no, it's, for me, that was the first time I'd worked on Disney property in that capacity. And it was like, I really enjoyed it. I mean, it was exhausting, but yet it was satisfying. Yeah, we had our host and hostess on camera, and so some of it was tripod, and then other times we went handheld. So I'm behind our DP, and I'm trying to make sure I don't dip into the shot. But there's a couple where he's tilting up, and then he's coming down, and so There were a few I just had to like hold back just because, because I've got a lav on the talent, and then I also was booming as a backup. And sometimes, I would just solo the lav, and it's like, that sounds so much better than this boom in this park. And of course, I feel like everywhere we recorded, there was a waterfall in the background.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And, it's like, no, not again. We had worked with one of the hosts, Julianne Huff, and I mic'd her up over by the Tiana's Bayou Adventure, formerly Splash Mountain. And so she did some things over there, and then we went to the opposite side of the park over to the Tron Light Cycle Run. And that was right next to the Grand Prix Raceway. So you have all these, basically go-karts going by loud. And then you had whatever music was playing and sound effects, and then the roller coaster in the background too. So that was even more of a challenge. And that one I couldn't, the way the shot was moving and she was coming in and then running, doing her lines and then running out, that was a little more of a challenge. So a couple times I couldn't even get the boom in because I was going to be in the shot. But it was interesting. Although I did notice I was getting my mixer. I have the 833, and I guess it's the Bluetooth LE. It would immediately crash the app, and then finally I'd catch it. I'm like, okay, leave it alone, don't touch it. But it was overall, like I said, it was pretty exciting, and I enjoyed it.
In general, it's just fun. Like, you're at Disney World, so it's pretty cool, especially, in our world too, to kind of see, I guess you would say, behind the magic, kind of behind the scenes and whatnot, how things operate and whatnot. I've been a Disney fan my whole life, so that's, it's been special to me to be a part of stuff like this and, the inner workings and stuff like that. But it's really cool because, Disney's Disney at the heart. They're a production company. So like, they do a really good job when it comes to productions in the park at facilitating. They've got teams that help, make sure locations are prepared and set and expectations, because it's an operating theme park. So there's got to be communication with locations in the theme parks and things set up, and whether it be conversations with management in the park, like if we can get background music turned down, and even too if it's a crowded operating hours of the park and you're not filming at night, you've got hosts and teams like helping crew push carts, and all while making sure guests don't get in the way or guests don't get hurt. So it really is a well-oiled machine, and they know what they're doing. And so it's really cool to be a part of that, because when you're doing something with them, all right, details are ironed out. It's not run and gun and figuring out like logistics on the spot. They know what they're doing, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I want to say we had probably maybe 4 or 5 like Disney escorts that were helping us get through the park around all the guests, because there were guests that just would walk right in front of our cart, and we'd have to come to a screeching halt or you're going to run them over. And so that was super helpful. And it was great. There was a couple of times where our producer was able to make a quick call, and we got music turned down at different places, and so that was cool. But yeah, overall, like I said, I did 2 overnights. We were one night in Animal Kingdom and then one night in Hollywood Studios. So the park's closed, so that was fun.
Yeah.
And then we did the 2 days in the Magic Kingdom, and that was a whole different level of, with the park being open and all the guests. So.
Yep. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, now you also do sound design and post audio mixing.
Yeah. Honestly, that's more of my daily work is post-production. I love being on location, and as of right now, I live, so close to the Magic Kingdom, I can hear the fireworks at night. And so it is, I love getting out there and doing location audio work. I've gotten to be a part of some cool projects as well outside of just Disney. I don't only do Disney World. I've gotten some fun opportunities to, there was a Netflix series that came out not too long ago as of the recording of this called Dirty Pop. I think it's called Dirty Pop, the boy band scam or something like that. That filmed, because that all took place here in Orlando. And so they filmed that here, and I got to be a part of that. And that was great to be more of like a LA based crew and work with them and stuff like that. So gotten to do a handful of stuff like that. But yeah, my more, I guess you would say, bread and butter is post-production. So like right now I'm sitting in my little home studio. We're just leasing this place right now, but fortunate to actually be building a home with an actual both recording studio and a post-production mixing studio as well. That'll be built out for Atmos and a live room for recording bands as well too. So that's That's coming next year. Actually, just yesterday, I was meeting with the builder, making sure that conduit runs are done right in the ground so that we can, do cabling and stuff like that once everything's built. But yeah, that's to come. But yeah, post-production, I do a lot of that. So I guess part of my history is, I'll just kind of go through it just for context, how I got to where I am, and then kind of what I do on a day-to-day is, I feel like with a lot of anyone in the world of audio, whether it be location audio, post-production, we somehow fell into it because we like music. Music or movies. And for me, it was both. I loved movies and I loved movie soundtracks. And as a kid, the first music I ever owned, both on cassette tape and CD, were movie soundtracks. That's what I would buy. And so growing up through school, started a band in high school, and I just found myself gravitating towards the gear. Like I was the one that bought the PA for the band, loved setting it up and all that. When it came time for college, I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do. I just knew I liked music. And eventually I found out about this school where you could just go to school and do music, Berklee College of Music. And so I ended up, took me 2 tries of auditioning, but I eventually passed the audition, was accepted. So I went to Berklee College of Music, and that's where I graduated from with a degree in music production and engineering. Which is great. I love, music, recording music, mixing music. I still do that today. But there was one class that you have to take to get that degree. And most people, when, they take this class just because they have to for the degree and they could care less, but it was audio for visual media. And you only need 1 semester of this kind of thing. And that was the class for me where it's just like, this is it. Essentially, the whole semester, you have to choose a 7 or so minute clip from a film and just basically hit mute and recreate everything. So that involves the entire part of the process, finding talent to ADR. And so that, coaching, producing ADR session, recording all that, you're working with a film scoring student and they're going to recreate a film score, not note for note what already was, but do something. And so you're working with them, producing with them, the logistics of that. You're doing Foley, you're doing hard effects, you're doing sound design, and then you're mixing as well. And that is just where I fell in love with that part of the process. It was honestly because of that project that I eventually got hired at a church in Charlotte, North Carolina. The person who hired me saw that and was like, oh, that's amazing. Like, this guy's cool. And so I ended up working for this church in Charlotte, North Carolina, doing a lot of audio mixing for video, but that's honestly where I held a boom pole for the first time. So I came into location sound because of post-production, and that's where I really cut my teeth when it came to location work. We were doing shoots left and right every day. I worked with the church's outreach program, and so we were going all around the city, all around the state. A really cool project I got to be a part of there was we filmed a documentary with a lot of this church's outreach partners that were doing a lot of work in Africa. So I got to go to Africa for 3 whole weeks, and we filmed this documentary out there. That was in Ethiopia, Tanzania, Uganda, and Sudan. And this is also when Sudan was in a war, and it involved being escorted by the cartel during the night because there's aerial bombings during the day. So that was pretty crazy. Yeah, so all in all, that's kind of how I got into this. And a lot of what I do still is I help churches mix sermon content for putting it on the internet or TV, so that it involves working with church media production and a lot of live production as well, which is I have a lot of experience doing as well. I actually did used to work for Disney before doing this, and I was a stage technician helping mix front of house for acts. So I've got a lot of that experience too. So multi-tracking live experiences, spoken word, bands with, an array of audience mics and mixing that in post-production. So a lot of really good at dialogue mixing and immersion with live productions and stuff like that. And then through that, I then got opportunities I worked for Waves, the plugin company, for a little bit, but then I also worked for a sound design studio called De Facto for a little bit. They also have a podcast called 20,000 Hertz. I got to edit and mix one of those episodes.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah. Dallas is great. So yeah, that's kind of my super long story in a nutshell. Do a lot of podcast production as well too. I used to have a podcast, but I help some friends out with podcasts. So I do that a lot.
All right. So you and your wife are both musicians, right?
That is correct. Yeah, I fell in love with music, which is, what got me into this wonderful world of audio. And then, my wife, her name is Harley. She is an amazing singer, vocalist. We met at the church that we used to work for. She was a worship leader. And that's part of our fun story as well, too. I walked in when she was recording vocals for an album. And that's when we kind of hit it off. And we actually did a church had us out. And we got to basically perform that song that she was recording when we met. Did a live recording of that, and I got to then mix that as well, and we put it out on our YouTube. But yeah, she's amazing. And, I'm a little biased, but all bias aside, no, she's incredibly gifted and talented. Yeah, so we like doing music in our spare time as well too, and that's part of like our heart too with the home that we're building and the studio in it is. We love music and there's something powerful about music. And so, we want to create a space where people can come, where you can invite family, friends, other, ministries, worship artists, churches to come and have a space to create music and create a sound that can go out and help people and reach people. And yeah, so that's our heart as well too. It's just cultivating environment for that, and we're super excited for that. But yeah, we love doing music together. Hope to be doing more.
That's awesome, man. Now, how has your studio and recording experience affected your production sound on location stuff?
That's a great question, and it goes hand in hand, because often when it comes to at least the Disney stuff, I'll be the one mixing the content. So I know exactly what to expect, but I also know what I want when I'm on location. Like, I know I'm going to be sitting down with this. I know, okay, if we're in a theme park, I'm going to have to be denoising a lot, but I also want to save myself in the end too. So I feel like that's given me a great perspective when it comes to a location, production, audio, recording, because I know what I would want. And same thing when I was working for De Facto and we were mixing trailers upon trailers for Netflix, HBO, whether it be for smaller series or bigger shows or Netflix original films or something like that. Typically for trailers, you're not often getting ADR and stuff like that. That is production audio. It's been good perspective of knowing like, oh gosh, it would have been great to have XYZ. So it's been a good framework for when I'm on set, shifting how I see and hear things, knowing just like what I would want, what I want to sit down and work with. So that it's been great for having discussions with directors, with DPs of like, hey man, like I'm hearing this thing, if we're able to like, case in point, you mentioned waterfalls at the Disney parks. They make for a beautiful backdrop in a shot, but at the same time, it's like if that's in the background, that's exactly where my boom's pointing. So it at least just creates conversations, so I can at least make them aware as well too, and say like, hey man, this is your shot. This is great and all, like beautiful. I just want to at least set your expectations that there's going to be that visual, it's going to have the sound, something like that. And then sometimes, on the flip side, it's be like, oh, hey, this is this type of sound. It's a waterfall or something like that. It's essentially white noise that can clean up a lot better than BGM music, which is, not this constant white noise, has, rhythm and stuff like that, or varying frequencies. And so at least can set framework for how you think through things and the discussions that you have, setting expectations. It's been very helpful on location.
Now, are there any particular denoising plugins or software you like to use that you could recommend?
Yeah, I tend to frequent the Dialog Isolate in the RX suite. So right now I'm on, I think they have RX 11, but I'm on RX 10. And I just use Dialog Isolate a lot within that. Waves has one called Clarity that's actually pretty good as well, which utilizes AI in this wonderful world of AI now, which is only going to get better. But yeah, so between those two, it works out great. I tend to not go too overboard with it. I always want to keep things as natural sounding as possible. So it's always a balance and a dance with what does the source audio sound like? What's the context of the piece? Is it just a voiceover where we're not seeing any visual? Because then that's one thing to consider how you're mixing versus like, oh, if we see them standing in front of a waterfall, then it's contextual and it makes more sense. So that kind of directs, again, how you're shooting and also the expectations, but then also how you're mixing as well too. It's like, okay, well, we can get away with it a little bit more now if we see it, and then maybe even supplement it some too. Because, if it's just a boom and you've got dialogue and that's just mono in the center, maybe it's cool if we supplement it a little bit and just have some on the side so you get a little bit of stereo imaging and whatnot. That's a lot of stuff I think about as well too. So.
All right, nice. Yeah, I've gotten Clarity and some of the Waves plugins, the D-Reverb and things like that, as well as I have Isotope. And I think I'm on version 10 too. I was trying to decide if I want to go to 11 or not. And sometimes at the end of the year, they have some really good specials. So.
I know for 11, it was more subtle updates. And so I think, I'm just kind of waiting for like when it's like, just like the iPhone, the latest iPhone is pretty subtle. So it's like, maybe I'll wait for like the one after and then justify the cost.
I understand. Yeah. What is your worst on-set experience?
Only two come to mind right now. And one was the one that I mentioned earlier, where it was the only boom pole I had, where in Africa, the soldering came undone inside the coiled internal XLR, and you need a boom pole. You're shooting a documentary in Africa, and they don't have B&H in Africa. And so it was just like, does anyone anywhere know someone somewhere that has a soldering iron, and we will try and fix this right here, right now, tonight, whatever. And thankfully that was the case. So that was kind of a scenario I didn't want to be in, but found myself in, and thankfully thought of and found a solution. The only other time where I can think of something it was a shoe. It was kind of a documentary type story type piece where we had traveled, and, I packed all my gear. I was traveling out of state, so I had to make sure I was mobile for a plane, so within a Pelican, and I had a case for my boom. And there was going to be this shot where this like worship band for the church was going to surprise a family, was going to come to their home and play like a little acoustic set in their front yard, in their driveway. So I was thinking through it in pre-production, like, okay, cool. So the family's not going to have, it's a surprise, so I can't mic the family. So I can mic the two singers, put lavs on them, and then I'm going to need the boom then for, getting family reactions. And so, there's going to be an acoustic guitar. And so I was like, okay, so maybe what I'll do is I'll get a small pair of condenser mics on a mic stand, set it up as like an XY. So I have, the vocals, and then I can get the guitar as well, and kind of just like a stereo sound of like the performance. And then just use the boom for any, reactions. And before we did this shot, there was kind of like a setup where we filmed with the people, like, all right, we're about to surprise them, blah, blah, blah. And because we weren't in front of their house yet, we had to do this around the corner, film then, and then walk around, and they do that performance. This pair of condenser mics that I was going to have on the mic stand, I didn't have it plugged in yet because we were in a different location. And so my plan was, all right, and I communicated this with the DP and the director, like, hey, when we get here, I just gonna need a quick second to throw this down, plug in these mics, and then we're good to go. But it was also going to be one take. And I did all that. It was great. Like, went smooth, like, okay, recorded the talking point, and then we went, scurried, and I set down the mics, I plugged them into my bag real quick, and they did the performance, and it was super touching and all that. And then that was great. Everything went well. And then it wasn't until I started breaking down my gear and then looked at my recorder. I was recording, so that's good. I didn't enable the 2 channels for the condenser mics that, would essentially capture the performance. Oh. So, man, my heart just sank because it was a surprise moment. Like, I can't be like, hey, can we do this? So take again so I could just make sure, because, those are mics that would require phantom power. And so I didn't want to have them like record enabled and already like set up with phantom. So for some reason, I didn't have them enabled. I was going to plug them in, engage phantom power, and then it's just they weren't enabled. Thankfully, I was the one who ended up mixing the piece, and I was able still to get a really great sound still with the boom and utilizing the lavs that the talent had on singing the song, and it ended up sounding pretty great as well too. Using some reverb to help create some stereo imaging as well, ended up being good. And honestly, no one could tell except for me. But still, as a perfectionist, and that kind of being a special moment that you can't really get back, I texted my wife immediately after that. I was in a dark place for a good minute. I didn't tell anyone either. I thought about it. I was like, but at the end of the day, I still recorded something. Something was there. Nothing was ruined per se. It was just not as great as I thought it could have been, but it's still, at the end, the story came across. And I think at the heart, that's what matters most, is conveying the story and the heart behind the message. And as long as that was intact, we're good. But I tell you what, man, that's how you learn lessons the best.
That's true. Now, even though you weren't recording to the ISOs, was it still passing through and being recorded for the mix track? Or?
No, because honestly, the way I work, honestly, I'm not necessarily working with anyone that requires a mix down or anything like that. So I tend not to record a mix down for myself if I know I'm going to mix it or anything like that as well, because I know I'm just going to be using isolated tracks and whatnot, and considering phasing and whatnot. So yeah, I didn't have that to work with. And honestly, I probably still would have used the ISOs and not used that anyways in the mix, just for those reasons alone too, phasing and having more control. So I could, with the vocal on the lav, I can kind of try and separate it more, clean it up and utilize that. So.
You know what happened to me though? I think one time I did, you're always trying to conserve space, and I would disarm channels and then rearm them later. But there was a time I think I missed something. And it went to the mix track because it was passing through, but I didn't have it on the ISOs because they weren't armed. And so I started just not turning the tracks off. I would turn the preamp all the way down on each one, but without disarming. And so it's recording nothing, but then if I don't hear them, I have to turn it back up and it's already. And so that's something I started doing only because I screwed up too. So yeah, it takes one time and you're like, oh. Or I think we were working on it was like a film or a short film or something. So I think I was sending a camera hop coming out of the mix bus anyway. So they were getting that to camera, even though I wasn't getting it on the ISO. So, the joys.
Right. I think that was part of it as well too. I did have a camera hop go into camera as well too. But that was only mono, so,
it wasn't beautiful XY.
Yeah, exactly. I had this vision. It was going to be great.
Well, what's an all-time favorite project you've worked on?
I've got a small handful, and one of these has a really cool story. I guess I'll start with some runners-up. I did mention Dirty Pop, that Netflix special on Lou Pearlman, which filmed here in Orlando. That was pretty special to be a part of, just because it was, at least for typically what I do, is a bigger production that got some really great traction. I think it was number one on all of Netflix across not just the US, but the entire world for a good while. So that was pretty cool to be a part of. Disney had a series that's still on Disney Plus, produced by an agency that did, or the movies that made us. That same production company, they produced Behind the Attraction. They did 2 seasons at Disney, and I got to do audio for part of season 2. So that was really cool. That was special for me, just because growing up being a Disney fan, a Parks fan, is awesome to be a part of that, and also just see a lot of cool stuff. Interview Imagineers. The documentary I mentioned, going to Africa for 3 weeks and just basically doing documentary work in third world country, sleeping under the stars in huts, evading, aerial bombings. There was a night where we were driving, escorted by the cartel, and we were hearing gunfire. And so we drove off to see these villagers that were hiding out in caves that's a real eye-opener experience. That was more of than just like doing a job. That was more of like you come back kind of transformed and just like you realize how good we have it here in just everyday life. Like I remember coming home to my apartment at the time and thinking like, I have carpet. Like I am wealthy. Like, but let's see. Top two, at least in Disney, there was a really cool piece we did at the Epcot park. There is Around the World Showcase. There's different countries that are represented. In the Mexico Pavilion, there's a mariachi band called Mariachi Cobre. And they did a highlighted piece on them talking about their history. And they date back to the 60s when they were just like a youth band from Arizona and basically would be flown out in Walt Disney's private plane to Disneyland from Arizona during Cinco de Mayo to play in Disneyland. And now they have this show in Epcot. So we got to interview like the main guy from that. And then I also got to multi-track their performance at like the main stage in Epcot and do all that production, recording, multi-track the band, but then bring it back, not only mix the interview piece, but also mix the performance as well too. And that was pretty sweet to like mend all of like my music experience as well. But then the like leader of the mariachi band, he came over too and was kind of sitting on the couch behind me, just like, oh yeah, like let's have the trumpets up a little bit here and stuff like that. So that was a really fun, neat experience. And that piece is out on YouTube, can be seen. But the coolest story is, I'm sorry if I'm long-winded, but this is a fun one. So this is probably my favorite piece that I've done where it exhausted every part of the process from music production to location sound to post-production mixing into music mixing. And it's got a twist ending that'll be revealed at the end. So this was the very first piece that I ever did for Disney. It was when I just moved down to Orlando, my wife and I, and got asked to be part of this opportunity. There was going to be a new ride opening up at Disney's Hollywood Studios, the Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway ride, which replaced the Great Movie Ride. Rest in peace. Great ride. But basically, it was going to be this huge campaign to promote the ride. They were going to have spots on the Disney Channel, on all these channels, and they're going to make so many pieces from this. And it was going to have like these 3 celebrity / influencers. And they were going to, basically the premise was they're going to give their take on this new ride. And one of the talents, her name is Meg Donnelly. She is, I guess, one of the leads in the Disney Zombies movies. It's not my age range, so I don't know much about it. But my niece freaked out when she heard I was working with Meg. So I'm like, okay, cool. So she must be special. So she was going to have a musical spin, a musical take on this new ride. And basically, so they came to me, and my buddy was like, oh, hey, Ryan is great with music. So Yellow Shoes came to me and they're like, okay, we're going to do this shoot, but Meg's going to have this musical spin. So what we want her to do is basically have a vocal arrangement of this brand new theme song for this brand new attraction that at the time no one had ever heard before. So they sent me, for your ears only, like no one must hear this but you kind of thing. It was like the new theme song of this new attraction. And they wanted me to come up with a musical arrangement, like a short condensed version that she could sing a cappella, that she would then sing on location when we do the video shoot. So it was essentially like directing as well too for her. They gave me an inspiration for like Dapper Dans at Disney. So I came up with one version where it was very barbershop quartet, super complex. And they came back to me, they're like, hey, that's a little too complex. Let's tone it down. And then they gave me the reference of the song Cups from Pitch Perfect. And that got my wheels spinning. And so it became this really cool, using the theme song of just like Meg singing, but with 4-part harmony at times and involving like hand percussion too. So claps, stomps, sliding the feet. So I arranged that version of the song for her, which was really cool. I got to use my wife as kind of like the pre-production demo. So with my wife being an amazing vocalist, I had her sing it. And then I basically like exported stems and wrote down all the parts and sent to Meg's people so she could learn the song and learn all the parts, even stems of like all the hand percussion and stuff like that, so she can learn all that. Then it came time for the shoot. Did the shoot, which was great. It's just a great shoot, lopping up the talent on the ride as well too, which is a whole nother thing. We didn't necessarily discuss how to handle miking talent on attractions at Disney. That's a whole nother discussion. But did that, and it was pretty cool to hear, like, had a portable speaker that Meg was essentially lip syncing to. And it was the pre-production version of my wife singing. So it's like my wife's voice blaring on this new ride and like Meg's lip syncing to it. But I also kind of turned into like a choreography coach too, like going through like, all right, you clap here, you stomp here, you slide your feet here, like teaching her how to like essentially dance to this song. So that was amazing. And then basically after the shoot, I had a little mobile recording rig set up in what was the old animation building at Hollywood Studios, where they actually animated some feature films such as Mulan, and they're not producing feature films from there anymore, but we got to use one of their office buildings, and I brought a portable mic with a reflection filter. I brought my iMac and basically had a recording session with Meg in this conference room, recording all the different, like, all right, here's this harmony, recording it. So getting those great and clean, and then taking all this, mixing the piece for video where she's on camera saying like, oh, hey, I'm Meg Donnelly, welcome to this ride, blah, 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 here's my spin. And then mixing her singing all this stuff and blending that together and whatnot. And you'll notice a lot of my language is all past tense. Had done this, were planning this. The part I didn't mention is we filmed this at the beginning of 2020. And we got all the way done to like final exports, final mixes, all the pieces done, complete. And then the world shut down. And nobody could come to this brand new ride. And so the pieces, they've never aired.
Oh, man.
And no one's ever seen them except for us who have worked on them. The ride opened, and the ride's great. It's just, all the hard work we did for those pieces have never and will never see the light of day. But that was definitely one where, man, it just had me firing on all cylinders. I got to arrange this song, basically like coach, direct, produce her singing it, do the location audio, do the mixing of it, both mixing music and, like location, narrative, commercial. And then the kicker is that no one will see it. But it was amazing.
Dang. Oh, that sounds like it. That's awesome.
I don't know. I think the thing that I love the most, whether it be with Disney or at least anything that we do, and I feel like this is, anything narrative work or any movies, shows, it's just story. And it's sharing and cultivating story. As humans, we base our livelihood off a story, off a history. And so we're so engaged with stories, whether it be podcasts or TV shows or movies. There's something about connecting all of us as humans and hearing stories and the way we relate and learn and grow. And so I feel like that's kind of the heart behind it all, and kind of the heart that I try and put through in all my work is just as long as we portray the story and the message, and whether it be a cast member at Disney and you're helping this family have the time of their lives and be immersed in the story that Disney is telling in the parks, or whether it be, what we're doing, what we're capturing, making sure that the story is captured so that it can be portrayed in the right light, or same thing on the post end, and mixing, like, how do we want to communicate this story? And that's a huge discussion on even like the tonalities, whether it be like the music and the harmonies used, portray a certain light and a tone on the way story is communicated. Same thing with sounds and the timbre of sounds and the use of sounds, a la, the screeching of violins and Psycho, or just like the placement and all of that, just in the aid of pushing story forward. And I feel like that's what we do, and that's the heart of it. And I feel like that's kind of my MO, is just making sure that message story is communicated both creatively and without distraction. So a lot of what I do when it comes to like mixing sermon content for churches, it is helping whomever is on the opposite end listening be able to listen without distraction so that if there's an important moment, they're not taken out of it so that they miss that moment. And I feel like that's the goal of a lot of what I do, is making sure that distractions are eliminated so that people can be engaged in what they are listening to.
Yeah, well said. Well, as we kind of wrap up here, any words of advice to share with, people, other production sound mixers out there, or people maybe just getting started?
It's simple, but I feel like just always be learning. And I'm sure you can attest to that too. It's like you can never learn everything. As people, we have to eat every day. And so with our craft, with what we do, if we want that to continue to grow, and if you don't want to be complacent with where you are, if you want to continue to grow, get better, have more opportunity, like that passion is within you enough to always be, what more can I get out of this? What more can I learn? A spirit of non-complacency, and just always be learning, always be looking out, have an open mind. I feel like, a lot of what I'm always trying to do is just always, how can I do things better? What more I'm always self-evaluating. And I feel like that's a good thing to do too, is just self-evaluating even after a shoot or something like that. Like, I was miking this person and I'm still getting Russell. Why is that? And then deep diving, whether it be on YouTube. And that's the day and age we're in now, is the information is everywhere. It's information overload, but we're in the greatest time where we do have access to so much information. So, just always be consuming that and enjoying it and doing things not just for the sake of income or anything like that, but we're producing art, we're producing story, and find joy with that. Keep it a passion, do things for fun that make you not burn out. But that's the thing that comes to mind, at least right now. It's just like, I'll always be open-minded to keep yourself learning.
So if people wanted to reach out and follow you online, what's the best way to do that?
My Instagram is at Ryan Jomo. That's Ryan, Jomo. And then my website is ryanmonette.com. On my website, I've got a contact me page, and I've also got a page with some resources where I do have a couple YouTube videos on things like mixing voiceover dialogue with music, how I mix sermons for large churches. I also have a course as well. But the best page is the contact page, because I do have an extremely huge heart for helping. I'm a firm believer that the gifts, talents, but also the experiences I've been given and honored to have are not for me to keep to myself. I feel like it's part of my calling that I share those with others, because then it's just helping the community, but also just like helping this wonderful world and reaching people for the bigger picture. So I have an extreme heart for helping others. So please, by all means, reach out to me. I'm an open book. I've got nothing to hide. I'd love to help how I can. And
Awesome. All right. A big thank you to Ryan Monette.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This has been so great and such an honor, truly.
I'd like to say thanks to everyone for listening. If you have questions, send an email to locationsoundpodcast@gmail.com. The Location Sound Podcast is part of the Audio Podcast Alliance, featuring a hand-picked selection of the very best podcasts about sound. Be sure to hear the latest episodes from our friends in the community at audiopodcast.org. Until next time, remember, sound is half the picture.